Peace. This is Rakeem with Wise the Dome TV. Today I have Truth Minister Paul Scott. He's an activist, journalist, scholar. Thank you for coming on to the show, fam.
We say all praises be to the Creator, all power to his people. In the name of Yahshua, the Black Revolutionary Messiah, I greet you, my brothers and sisters, in the spirit of truth and the words of peace. Shalom Aleichem. What's going on, good brother?
We good. We good over here, man. How you doing, bro?
I'm well, sir.
All right. So let's take it from the beginning, man. I ask everybody that comes on this, what led you to begin studying your history? Like what sparked you to get on that path of, self-discovery and self-realization?
It was probably walking into the no bookstore in Durham. Like so many people in Durham, I'm in my early 20s, early 20s. And I stumbled into the no bookstore and saw all these books, man. And I started reading. And then from there, I just started meeting all these people who used to come through the no bookstore. And I said, that's my calling.
Right. So I'm a no bookstore alumni too, man. And for those that don't know, that's in Durham, North Carolina. It was a Black bookstore right across the street from North Carolina Central University. If you can, just tell the people, like some of the people that actually came through that bookstore, man, because it's a legendary list.
Everybody.
Right.
Jamil Alameen, Kwame Ture, Rabbi Ben-Ami, everybody, brother. Barry Shango, Coakley, Dr. Ben, everybody came through.
That's legendary.
And as you know, some civil rights people actually got kicked out. The no bookstore was no joke.
Right.
I lectured in New York, and they say that if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. No.
Right.
If you can make it through the no bookstore, you can make it anywhere.
Right.
It's brutal, man. It's like Showtime, the conscious Showtime at the follow-up.
Well, that's the spirit of Durham, man. We're gonna give it to you real.
Bro, no bookstore would take no prisoners.
Right.
If you didn't come in there with your facts, because I used to just sit in the back of the room and soak up, just listen. But if you came there trying to debate people,
better come with it. Yeah, I think that's kind of the same thing for me. Just going into the no bookstore and seeing all those books around, and these were books that you wouldn't see at a chain bookstore, a European bookstore. You wouldn't see this stuff, right? And so it just opened up my world to just something totally different. And then the brothers and sisters that would go there, and building with them, and you're seeing people who are living a different way of life, and it just sparked something in me that never went away. So with that said, what were some of the books that you would say that had a big impact on your growth and development?
Theologically, when I started reading Rabbi Ben-Ami's books, then I met him at the no bookstore. But that's when I stopped being a Christian.
Right.
I read Rabbi Ben-Ami's books, and I was like, wow.
Right.
I've been missing something. But the usual.
Yeah.
But it was the lectures, really, more so than the books. It was those lectures. Every Thursday night there used to be lectures.
Right.
And Steve Coakley is a major influence on me.
Right.
Oh God, that's
Yeah.
But I was always the young kid, not always the young kid, but the hip hop kid. Because a lot of the elders were, they were masters in teaching about Kemet and theology, but I knew hip hop.
Right.
So the elders would look at me, okay, you just deal with hip hop. So really, that's how I started. That's how I got my writing style from, because the elders wouldn't let me into any other spot. The only spot they let me in was hip hop. So I said, okay, I'll just bring consciousness and Black power to hip hop. So that's how that started.
That's real, man. That's actually what I'm striving to do here, is to merge the two until they one. You know what I'm saying? As far as knowledge itself and hip hop and what's going on in those two worlds. I want to kind of line them up. You know what I mean? Because that's how I used to be. You know what I mean? We grew up with people like Public Enemy and Lakim Shabazz and, you know, just brothers that was unapologetically, you know what I'm saying, keeping it real and teaching through their music.
However, to really keep it real, brother, you're only talking about 4 years out of 30 years.
Right, right.
That conscious period started with Public Enemy, ended with Sister Soldier. So, I mean, because a lot of these eras, the Black Panther Party, Garvey movement, we've been able to sustain a Black Power consciousness movement for 4 years.
Wow.
I mean, it might have lasted longer as far as the energy, in theory. I mean, but if you're talking about the apex, the average lifespan of a Black Power organization was 4 years.
What would you say is the reason that it only lasts 4 years? Is it infiltration from the government or you know, external influence or things that happen internally?
All the above. Because, you know, the devil uses whichever religion you subscribe to. The devil always uses your lower self against your higher self. But there were a lot of things, because if you look at we're talking hip hop, because I know you're a hip hop brother.
Yeah.
If we're talking hip hop, we got to remember those weren't scholars, man.
Right.
Those were kids.
Right. Right.
I mean, you can't take on the ADL. I mean, you 20 years old, but you taking on the ADL.
Right. Right. That's you know, yeah. You see, they make brothers fold to this day who are already established and multi-millionaires.
Nick Cannon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know what I mean?
But you're talking about 19, 20-year-old kids who just wanted to rap.
Right.
Basically. Now, you got people like Griff and Chuck who were really, you know, about the movement, man. But some of those kids, man, it was a niche.
Right. Right.
It was a niche. You know, for 4 years, it was a niche to be conscious. You know, the way your dashiki and your African gear, you know, quote Malcolm X. But when stuff got real, stuff got real.
Yeah. That's real. That's true, man. One thing I wanted to ask you, you know, because journalism and hip hop, they're both display the power of the pen. And you've written for the Durham Herald Sun, you've written for the Final Call. Like, how did you get your start in journalism, and how important is it to have like militant Black perspectives in the realm of journalism compared to a lot of, you know, Black writers who don't want to step on too many toes and don't want to actually speak how they feel. You know what I mean? So if you can, just shed some light on that.
Early 90s when I started, because I've been in the movement since 1992. Early 90s, it's not like today where you have 24-hour news cycles.
Right.
That didn't exist back in the day. You had a 6 o'clock, you had a morning scratch. 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at noon, and 30 minutes at night.
Wow, yeah.
You know, 11 o'clock.
Right.
6, 12, and 11. 30 minutes. So you just couldn't get on the news any kind of way, especially if you were talking anything with Black consciousness in the 90s. So I got on, I started writing letters to the editor of the local paper. Then later on, letters to the editor to the Black paper. About 1996, scratch. About 1998, I started writing editorials for the major Black papers in the country. And in 99, man, I just started writing all over.
Wow.
One of my first articles I put up, my first articles outside of letters to the editor, because let me back up. Because back in the day, this is before really people had the internet.
Right.
So we're talking about typing and faxing.
Right.
So basically, you're talking about guerrilla journalism for real. And we'll go into some of those tactics, but to be more specific about your question, it was 1999. I put out an article called Fear of a Black Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah. and people wouldn't touch the subject. This is 99 now.
And
Now people, it's no big thing.
And was
In
this
1990,
was this on one of the white newspapers? Or I wouldn't say white newspapers, but you know what I mean.
Both.
Yeah. Okay.
Man, I was kicked off of black talk shows for talking about it. Yeah, call in. You couldn't talk about it. So this was 1999.
Wow.
So I wrote an article called "Fear of a Black Jesus," and I sent it to the Final Call. And the Final Call ran that article, and the rest is history, bro.
Wow. Wow. So we know, obviously, the Final Call, they, we know that they are here to shed light on those type of voices. But as far as other major publications, how did they respond to articles that you were writing that were, militant?
Really, I went the hip hop lane. And hip hop gave you more leadway. Because hip hop was supposed to be rebellious.
Right.
So really, I went to as far as journalism, putting articles in all hip hop, Baller Status,
right,
UR Web. So, I stayed in the hip hop lane. I was able to infuse consciousness with hip hop.
Right. Yeah, and I've definitely seen a lot of your articles that were in all hip hop. That used to be one of my kind of go-to websites. But you mentioned guerrilla journalism. What is guerrilla journalism for those who don't know?
It's like putting the Bogart into journalism. For those who know, understand.
Right, right.
But it's like using any means necessary to get your message out. Because back in the day, I'm gonna give you a trick I used to do. Okay. You remember Teen Summit back in the day, and all those Tavis Smiley and all those people had talk shows?
Yep, I remember Teen Summit. That came on in the morning on Saturdays, I believe.
They gave out an 800 number, right, where you can call in?
Right.
Everybody waited till 11 o'clock to call in. I wrote the number down. I would call in at 10:55 and always got through. Seriously, brother. Right. I had access to so many people, celebrities, politicians, by just merely calling in 5 minutes before time.
Wow.
And always got through. I even did that with C-SPAN.
Wow.
C-SPAN, man, saw a lot of my campaigns when I fought against pimp juice, when Nelly pulled out the pimp juice, and I felt that was a bad idea. The reason that first gained national attention is because I snuck into C-SPAN and talked about it.
Oh, wow. So let me ask you this. And like I said, this, definitely a platform that caters to hip hop. What made you feel like pimp juice was a bad idea? Because, within hip hop, we've always had kind of a balance of things that were possibly considered in the conscious realms, and also, what we may consider negative. Because I remember that was definitely a big hit for Nelly at that time. What made you feel like that was?
No, I'm talking about the drink.
Oh, the drink.
Yeah, he had a drink.
Oh,
that's the first time. Yeah, that was the first time I was in Newsweek.
Yeah, because around that time he came out with that drink. I want to say like Cameron had came out with a drink that was like it's like scissor. It was like mocking promethazine.
I boycotted that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can Google that. Yeah.
Yeah, they did. I remember that. So what was your issues with the drink? The fact that it was just unhealthy and the type of marketing they were doing?
Everything with me has always been time. Because I always had a thing. Whatever came in my spirit that was, because hip hop somebody had to be the conscious man. I got a lot of hate too back in the day. Now, a lot of people look back and they say, well, we shouldn't have done this and we shouldn't do that. No, back in the day, I got a lot of hate for standing up. against the negativity in hip hop. Now those cats are older, they're in their 40s and 50s, and they understand. But when they were doing it, now I got a lot of hate, brother.
Right.
So with Pimp Juice, it just happened at a time when they were pushing the pimp image of Black people, and I told people to step off of the pimp image.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I get it. And with being that voice though, and you know, a lot of times within the realm of hip hop, it's kind of like it's become like an anything goes type of atmosphere, right? And I feel like we always need somebody to be that voice, or to, you know, in this case, a lot of people, actually multiple people, to be like, you know, just to keep the checks and balances of things going, man. Because right now it's really like a free for all, man. Everybody can do what they want to do as long as they are getting money behind it. You know what I mean? It's so capitalist driven that a lot of the consciousness is nowhere to be found in it.
You know who gave me the most grief?
Who is
Conscious
that?
folks.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, we're talking about late 90s, early 2000s with the conscious community. Oh, you just don't understand the youth, and let the youth have their fun. So, you know, sometimes I look at these cats now who have gotten conscious and, you know, critique, and I'm like, no, you criticized me when I was doing that.
Right, right.
But it is what it is.
Do you, indeed, do you think that in 2021 consciousness has become somewhat of a trend for people within the industry and without? Because, you know, you see a lot of people who like to be in those spaces, but whenever it was a time where it wasn't cool, it was a time where you got a lot of pushback. Is that something that, you know, for the most part, we should just kind of accept and embrace as far as people coming into things? Because like you said, it wasn't always easy to dwell in these spaces and have a voice, right? Now I mean, you could be in this space, but just chill and learn. But to act as if you're an authority on something, you had to show and prove that. At this point, everybody seems to be an authority on everything. You know what I mean? Is that something that you've noticed? And is there anything that can, you know, that I guess that can be done about consciousness becoming a trend and a lot of misinformation being spread just because of the lack of checks and balances within the community?
It's white liberal control now. Have you ever noticed that there's a gap in history between 1960 and 1992?
What do you mean? What do you mean a gap?
If you talk about the civil rights era, I mean, now we're still in Black History Month.
Yeah.
When people talk about when we fought for our rights, people skip 40 years or more.
Yeah, right, right.
It's like nothing happened after 1968.
Right, right.
Nobody talks about my era, where I became conscious. Nobody talks about the 80s, the 90s. Like Virginia Beach never happened. The Miami riots never happened. All these things never happened. All these protests in the early 90s, Howard Beach, Crown Heights, people dismissed that wasn't a civil rights or a human rights battle. They totally erased that. So they skip all the way back to 1968.
Right.
Because our era, my era, because I'm a little older than you, my era, the 80s and the 90s, it was Black. White liberals weren't invited to that party. It was based on, you know, Garveyism, Kwame Ture, you know, the Nation of Islam, and a lot of reasons why they don't want to talk about that period, because you can't talk about that conscious period without mentioning Minister Farrakhan.
And the Million Man March.
So yeah, but I'm talking even before then. I'm talking about the late 80s, early 90s.
Right, right.
When a lot of protests, Tawana Brawley, there was a lot of activism during that time, but they don't want to talk about that. And they don't really want to talk about the conscious hip hop era, because, you know, you can't mention that era without talking about Minister Farrakhan. So
Wow.
instead of mentioning him, they rather pretend it never happened.
Wow.
That's why you have, in my opinion, you have that gap between 1968 and Trayvon Martin, 2012.
You know, you kind of that's a powerful point. It kind of made me think of how, so like, you know, we had the protests and boycotts of the 60s that they teach you in Black History Month and that they like to place a highlight on, right? But they don't frame the LA riots the same, right?
No.
They frame that as if you know, that was brothers and sisters going crazy, burning up their own neighborhood for no reason type of thing. And so that's kind of like, it's like how media, that's the power of the media. They can frame something and have the masses believe it's one thing when in reality it is it's a reaction to an injustice that was committed against that people that are rioting. You know what I mean? Like, and even with Martin Luther King saying what riot is the language of the oppressed, like we don't get that part in the media. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, even looking at what the Michael Brown situation. Right. Before Black Lives Matter and them got on the ground, it was the Black nationalists who actually were on the ground for the new Black Panther Party. They were on the ground first.
Yeah.
But they totally wiped that out of history and said, okay, Black Lives Matter. No. If you look at the early pictures, after the Michael Brown murder, you see the Moors, you see the new Black Panthers, but they have written our side of the fence, the Black nationalist side of the fence, totally out of history.
Right. You know, that's another great point, because Black Lives Matter came in and it became a totally different scene there from everybody from just hearing the commentary from everybody that's still alive. All right, the activists that's still alive that were done. Yeah, a lot that like Black Lives Matter came and destroyed the energy of what they were doing. And so like that leads to this next question. I understand the sentiment, right? I think a lot of people who aren't necessarily in the quote unquote conscious community, but they actually care about what's going on with their people, right? I think a lot of people confuse the two, meaning the Black Lives Matter sentiment saying Black Lives Matter and the actual Black Lives Matter organization, right? And I think at times that can be a little bit dangerous because it allows the organization to come through, do whatever they got to do. And the people saying Black Lives Matter are in a way supporting the organization, no matter what nefarious things they may have going on behind closed doors. And it said, that they have mismanaged money. I saw something last year about how much money that like they received in donations and spent it all with the Democratic Party and, just all kind of wild stuff, man. So like in your Black Lives Matter as an organization, like what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I salute anybody who is doing what they feel is necessary to help Black people. However, if you have white liberal control, controlling the narrative. I mean, when you throw millions and millions of dollars, that's a lot of power.
A lot of power.
And it's one billionaire, even if I mention his name on this Zoom, we know who he is. It might get kicked off. So I'm not even going to do that. Right. That's real.
Yeah.
That's real. But white liberal control, white liberal money, control the directions, made it into a marketing scheme. I had to send out an advisory last year to the media that I'm not Black Lives Matter. I had to make that distinction because they were lumping everybody under one umbrella, Black Lives Matter. Everybody was a Black Lives Matter activist. I said, nope, not my side.
Right.
Like Messiah.
Right. And you brought up nationalism. I think a lot of people don't really understand the science of Black nationalism. If you can because, you know, that was obviously in 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, being a Black nationalist was kind of the foundation of a lot of different Black movements, you know what I mean? Whether they were even founded in religion or founded in just straight up activism, you had an element of Black nationalism within it. Now, I don't necessarily see that as much, obviously, with the mainstream organizations and, like you said, the liberal controlled organizations. So if you can build on what Black nationalism is and why it is needed, as far as in the as far as activism, and why it's something that we should look into as far as our organizations.
Well, basically, very basically, Black nationalism is the idea that Black people can control their own destiny.
Mm.
And that scares white America, that we can actually think for ourselves.
Mm.
That's the basis of Black nationalism. So those of us who subscribe to Black nationalism, we're really carrying on a tradition that goes back to Martin Delany, Marcus Garvey, Kwame Ture. So you have a lineage that we represent, and that lineage has always been in conflict with the white power structure, primarily white liberals.
Right.
You know, because really, you know, I've been on Fox News many times.
Right.
I've debated Sean Hannity many times. I've debated most conservative commentators on that platform. But the white liberals, they do it kind of sneaky. They just try, it's like benign neglect. They're just trying to pretend you don't exist.
Wow.
The right wing, they need a boogeyman.
Right.
So every now and then, Fox needs a Black boogeyman, because I was the Black boogeyman on Fox. 2006, I was on there 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah, 4 times.
And so if you can, tell me about that experience. I mean, who did you have, I don't want to say necessarily a debate, but who were you on there talking to, and how did that go, man? Like, what did you take from it whenever you were done?
Asking myself why I did it. Because I didn't have this is before social media. So now, you know, you go on a show like that, your Twitter blows up. But see, that was really the early stages of social media, like Facebook. It just come out. So sometimes I would ask why I did it, to be honest with you. You know, exposure, and plus somebody had to represent Black nationalism on that forum.
Right.
You know, I remember one year one show I came up there with red, black, and green armbands, red, black, and green kufi, and a white Jesus versus Black Black Yeshua t-shirt. I wore that on Fox News. So maybe it planted a seed, hopefully.
I'm sure.
But some things you just do because you can.
You know, I'm pretty sure it planted a seed, because not only going to the know, obviously planted a seed in me, but seeing people like Dr. Khalid Muhammad on I don't know if he was necessarily on Fox, but on Donahue. And Farrakhan on Donahue, and Sister Soldier, like seeing them even as a kid sparked something in me where I knew what they were kicking was the truth. I might not be able to articulate why it's the truth, but I knew it was the truth. You know what I mean?
I got banned from Fox for mentioning Dr. Khalid.
Really?
Yeah, it's like what
I was doing to the ancestor, man. That's powerful. Like, what, they actually banned you just for simply mentioning his name? Wow.
Sean Hannity did, because I haven't done his TV show for a minute.
Wow.
But about 5 years ago, you know, I started being a frequent guest on his radio show, and I debated Jesse Lee Peterson, and at the same time, it was crazy. But the last time I was on, we started talking about role models. And I mentioned Dr. Khalid, and Sean Hannity went into a rage. Oh, you mentioned him on my show. You're never going to come on my show again. And I
Wow.
haven't been. Yeah, and that was it.
Wow. That let you know how Dr. Khaled was doing something right, huh?
Yep.
What when you brought up Jesse Lee Peterson, what is the incentive and for those type of people? Because I don't know if you saw Herschel Walker on the whole HR 40 thing
That's
the
right.
other day, and he's giving his commentary on why Black people don't need reparations and it's divisive, and tried to use the Bible to back that up, but like, what is the incentive for these type of people who are in the Black community that have these platforms to go against the will and the needs of the people?
Dr. Claude Anderson called it meritorious manumission.
Hmm.
And that's a term that goes back to slavery when, quote, massa, unquote, used to give slaves freedom who told on other enslaved Africans.
Hmm.
Meritorious manumission. So, there are rewards in doing that. They need a mouthpiece.
Right.
There's certain things they can't say
Mm-hmm.
because they're trying to be somewhat fair and balanced.
Right.
So they get a Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson to say it for them.
And I want to get into your Black Messiah movement that you have founded, and it kind of is the perfect segue. Before we get into that, though, being rooted in the Bible, right, and seeing it as a Black revolutionary book, and somebody like Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, who sees it as a book that we all are, like on a kumbaya type of thing, right? Or even possibly as, master slave type of situation going. How is one person able to see the revolutionary aspects and the Bible as a Black revolutionary book and somebody like Jesse Lee Peterson or Herschel Walker sees it in the opposite way, as something that is teaching everybody to, I guess, acquiesce to white supremacy?
I mean, it's like anything. Everything depends on how you use it.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a Jesse Lee Peterson, a Herschel Walker. You can, if you want to use the book for that, or you can be a Nat Turner.
Right.
I just choose to see it as what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible was never meant to be taken literally. It's never meant to. I mean, it's not a trick. It's based on older religions.
Right.
That's just history.
Right.
They told us now their historical aspects, and we can get into a historical debate, what's real and what's not real. But it was never meant to. It was never meant to be a historical book. They taught in allegories back then.
Right.
Because I'm not going to debate somebody over how, all the animals of the earth, two of every kind, got into a boat.
Right.
Where were the dinosaurs? How the whales get in? See, I'm not going to debate anybody over that. I'm not going to debate anybody over if the world started with Adam and Eve, how did they have children? I mean, who did their children marry? Right. I'm not going to get into that debate because I know where allegory is.
Right.
But you have a plantation theology. See, great grandma and them used to say, I'm going to pray over the Bible and I'm going to pray for understanding. Some people still do. That was because they necessarily had to pray over the Bible. They couldn't read.
Wow.
I mean, illiteracy was high back then. Great-great-grandma couldn't read.
Right.
Great-great-grandma couldn't read. So she's not going to tell people I can't read the Bible. I gotta meditate on it or have a preacher tell me what it says because I can't read. So she just said, I'm gonna wait for the Lord to show me what it means.
Wow.
But now you got Google, you sit in church, you can actually fact check the preacher while you sitting in the pulpit, and he in the pulpit.
Right.
I always wondered, how come preachers don't take questions?
I know, have a Q&A session at the end, right?
Q&A session. You know, I would have no problem with that. You know,
Because I think that would expose the, I think that would, so like you said, right? Whenever you're dealing in allegory, the symbolism of the story is supposed to draw up the lesson. But I think in a lot of these, when it comes to these preachers, you know, as a 5%er, we call a lot of them, we call bloodsuckers of the poor, because what they're doing, they are putting themselves as the intermediary between the congregation and God, right?
like the Pope.
Yeah, exactly.
The vicar of Christ.
Yeah, exactly. And if they had a QA session after that, you know, those illusions about what they know and who they are might begin to crumble. You know?
And a lot of us ego.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
But if you're dealing with truth, brother, because my theology is based on this. Whether you agree with it or not, it matters not to me, because you're still going to feel the impact.
Right, right.
Just as lightning strikes to the east, even unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be.
Yeah.
So you still going to feel the impact regardless of whether you believe or not. That's what you know what truth is. Truth is, whether you believe it or not, you still going to feel the impact.
Right. Wow. So leading with that being said, you being the founder of the Black Messiah movement, can you speak to that and how you started it, and what is the actual objective of the movement?
The Black Messiah movement, and this is the answer I give white folks, and I expound for you though. It's an activist movement based on Black liberation theology. That's the mainstream definition I give white reporters so they can just understand it. However, on a deeper sense, the Black Messiah movement is based on Black liberation Bible believers, but it's in degrees. Christ's degree for the Christian, MYD, and MYD stands for Messianic Disciples of Yahshua, the Black Revolutionary Messiah. That's what the MYD stands for the Israelites. And for those who understand the historical value of the Bible and understand that it's an ancient, based on ancient religions, that's the Melchizedek degree.
Wow. So is it, whenever someone wants to be a part of the movement, would they be relegated to just one of these avenues, or would they be able to study all three?
Hopefully they'll grow. But see, it's an activist movement. So you can do all your activism in the Christ degree. Now, if you're in the NYD degree, I wouldn't suggest you go out trying to debate people about the color of the people of the original Hebrew Israelites and trying to prove that.
Right.
And if you're just stuck, I won't say stuck, if you operate in the NYD degree, you probably wouldn't be the best person to try to explain the connection between Islam, Christianity, ancient Kemetic science, and how they all connect. So it's all about staying in your lane. But like I said, but activism, based on 99% of what we do is activism, and you can do that in the Christ degree. Everything else is just, you know, what you personally believe. Because, you know, we can't prove none of this.
Right.
That's why as Black Messiahs, we say we don't really debate, even though I break that rule from time to time.
Right.
We don't really debate, we make miracles. And miracle stands for manifesting in reality, a clear living example. Manifesting in reality, a clear living example. Don't speak the word, be the word. Right.
Because that's empowering.
Because on a deep level, the Bible is you. You the Bible. The whole Bible is supposed to be about, when you get into the Melchizedek degree, Christ's degree is who is he, meaning the Most High. NYD degree or Israelite degree is who are we. Melchizedek degree is who am I.
So it's like you said, it can be, it's kind of like, it just sounds like there's levels. You know what I mean?
There's levels to everything.
Right.
There's different levels to everything. And that doesn't make one greater than the other one. Because again, it's based on activism. Right. You know, how are you going to apply that to make your society better?
It seems like when and it seems like whenever you are able to, whatever your belief is or whatever your school of thought is, whenever you're able to sync that with your activism and your duty to your community, it seems like it makes those teachings much more powerful. Like, would you agree to that?
As well, it should be.
Mm.
Because you don't need to know a lot about activism, theology to go out there and feed people.
Right, right.
Or to go to a school board meeting and demand better schools, or, like we do, give out free Black history books. You don't need a lot of theology for that.
Right.
When I'm on the streets, if this conversation comes up, we can talk about the Bible if you want to, but I'm there to feed, I'll give out snacks, give out books.
Right, right.
So it's all about action, man, because a lot of times things become ego, based on ego. I got to prove to you my way is right.
Right.
But, when you get to the Melchizedek degree, you're like, nah, the only manifestation of my belief system you're going to see is me.
Wow. Wow. You're going to see what I believe through my works.
Yeah, that's all you're going to see.
Yeah.
The only way you can judge, you can't judge me because people get caught on belief. Nobody cares what you believe.
Right, right, right.
What do you do with your belief? You can believe anything. See, we can train our minds to believe anything. And reality, with the frailty of the human spirit to be really real, my granddaddy used to have a saying. He said, you'll call on anybody. If you're sick enough, you'll call on any God that you think can heal you. I've lived long enough, brother, to see atheists become Christians, Christians become Muslims, Christians become Comedics, Hebrew Israelites become Comedics become Hebrew Israelites. And they don't owe, when they make that switch, they owe no one an apology. They just do it.
Right.
So I know the frailty of human belief makes it kind of foolish to deal with what somebody believes, because that changes on day to day.
Right.
I could believe in the Bible today, and life circumstances happen. I start believing the Quran tomorrow.
Right. I think that is, especially as we begin to, do what we do and grow within self, it becomes less about, what the next man believes and more about how are you being of service to your people? You know what I'm saying? Like, how many times have you seen, and don't get me wrong, G, I'm a 5%er, so I never ran from a debate back then. You know what I mean? But how much time do we lose debating sometimes when we could be finding common ground and a way to build and both be of service to the same communities that we represent?
And that's why I said the Black Messiah is based on activism. I mean, when you out there in these streets, and you know how Durham is, when you out in these streets, you're not going to approach a street cat and try to debate him really about anything.
Right.
That's disrespect.
Right.
Because a lot of these street cats, they're more Christian than they are anything else.
Yeah.
And they will call you racist for even trying to talk about the people in the Bible. I'm talking about street cats. They can be all kill this in, shoot this in, but you get into a conversation about race. Oh, I'm not trying to be racist. We all one people.
Man, that's crazy. But you're right.
But it's true.
Yeah.
That's been my experience. So we might have a certain energy as scholars towards each other. And we might get on YouTube and go back and forth and get real disrespectful about what you believe. But you ain't going to go tell that street cat that his mama crazy for being a Christian. No.
Nah. I saw a video the other day of a brother that was actually trying to do that, man. And he almost got himself in a situation that he wasn't going to make it home that night. You know what I mean?
Easily. So if I can't do that against a street cat, why should I do that against you?
Right.
But the main thing about Black Messiahs is our motto. Stop waiting for a savior and be one.
Right.
And church people get mad, but it's in their Bible.
That's an interesting thing. And like when you have scriptures that speak about ye are gods and things like that. Those are scriptures that could be empowering to anybody that hears it, right? But I never heard those in the church when I was growing up. I never heard those.
Because if I empower you, what you need me for?
Right.
That's
right.
the preacher attitude.
Right.
But yeah, when we say, it doesn't say per se stop waiting for a savior and be one, but the scripture is Yahshua told his disciples, you will do these work and greater works you shall do. So if you're doing the works of the Messiah, that makes you a Messiah.
Right.
And plus, what pastors don't tell you, Messiah just means anointed.
Right.
And Yahshua wasn't the only Messiah.
No, not at all.
Cyrus and Isaiah, Isaiah isn't even talking about Yahshua, because it's talking about the messianic blueprint. People say, they're talking about Jesus. No, they weren't thinking about Jesus right there. They were talking about Cyrus, the Persian. He wasn't even in the house of Israel.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you talk about Messiah, you're talking about somebody's anointed. And anointed just means doing a purpose for the Most High.
Right.
But there were a lot of Messiahs in the Bible. Anybody doing God's will, the Most High's will is a Messiah.
Right. And so whenever because I know as far as you go out and you do real activist work, that's it's not just behind the keyboard, it's not just behind the phone, and I know a lot of times you'll bring books and you'll bring fruit and you'll bring food for the community. What type of books do you bring out there, that in hopes to spark the community and get them interested in their own past and their own self-discovery? What type of books are you bringing out there?
This is good books, because I'm surrounded right now with 2,000 books. And I give away books in the community of the same quality. Because I got one stack for me. Because 99% of what I do is out of pocket, out of my own pocket.
Right.
So there's a library in Durham, Stanford L. Warren Library, and about 5-6 years ago, they started selling classic used books. I'm talking about classic used books for $1 or $2.
Wow.
So I just drop $1, $2, get like 5-6 books a week and pass them out in the community.
Wow, man, that's a beautiful thing, man. Because anytime like that, people, when a community begins to study for themselves, when reading becomes a habit and something that we look forward to do instead of other forms of entertainment, like we have entertainment all around us, from the internet, from movies to music, but when reading becomes just as entertaining to you, man, you going somewhere then, you know what I mean? Because you're able to I think reading teaches you a level of discernment.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where you can start to see truth from falsehood compared to even sometimes just watching a documentary. I mean, they have agendas as well, you know what I mean? But creating a community of readers, man, I think that's powerful and extremely important.
But a lot of conscious people are just like preachers. They don't want people to be as smart as they are. I mean, if I debate you one time, brother, that should be our last debate, because I should be able to know everything you know after that point.
Right. You
should give me the sources for your information. I can go back and fact check. So if we debate, I really should know everything you know after we debate. But a lot of these conscious cats are just like preachers.
Right.
If we teach the masses, nobody wants to bring the masses fire.
Right.
Everybody, ego says, I got to know more than you. That's why you don't see a lot of these conscious cats give us sources.
Right.
They might Google something, but as far as giving the books and the pages and say, you need to read this book, that's the difference between now and then. You got the Coakleys and the Dr. John Henry Clarks. They used to always say, read this book. Dr. Clark, his thing was, read this book, read this book. So one day I just decided to go and read every book they said read.
Right.
Yeah, so I went back and read that material, man. Coakley said, go read this book. I went and read it. Go read Quigley's book. I read it. Dr. Clark said, go read this book. I read it.
I think that's kind of I think, and I might catch a little bit of flack for this, but in a lot of cases, I can definitely see this to be true. Um, a lot of, not all, you know what I'm saying? And I don't like to make generalizations of a whole group, right? Because it's always never that way. But there are a lot of people within the conscious community who aren't reading shit at all, man. Like you would think that they were well read, but they're not reading these books that became the foundation of Black nationalist movements. Because I can tell by how some of their bills are. Like, you wouldn't be saying that if you actually read that book that you taking that picture with.
I don't really debate Black people. Now, I debated Sonetta about, and that video is gone. It was about a year ago.
Yeah, I saw it. I remember.
And that video was gone. You saw what happened, right?
Yeah, I saw.
In all humbleness, but that video is gone, man. I mean, that video was like scraped from the internet.
Yeah, yeah.
But really, I don't debate. I got, and for long story short, it went on with 20 minutes, and I got kicked off, and because I got kicked off because he said I was telling Christians and Hebrew Israelites the truth, and I thought that was the whole purpose. But anyway, that's neither here.
Right.
But it's real crazy, man, when you start talking about the conscious community and their motivation, because everything's about your motivation.
Yeah.
What's your motivation? Are you trying to raise the consciousness of the next brother or sister? Or are you trying to elevate yourself?
Right. Yeah, real talk. Yeah, a lot of things. Yeah, we got to move from being self-serving and actually serving the people. And so I wanted to kind of build with you about what's going on in Durham as far as you said there's a Holocaust education bill, right? That's being presented, and you would like to add Black history to that bill. What's going on with that? Are you getting any pushback, and what can we, the people, do to help you in that fight?
Let's talk about that, being that this is probably the only platform I can talk about it.
Right.
Because you're talking about a conspiracy of silence. They got folks shook.
Right.
It's always been that way.
Right.
It's always been that way. They consider, the European Jews our allies, but they have had, look at Nick Cannon.
Right.
They'll get you shook.
Yep.
That's why you got to be rooted in your spirituality.
Right.
When you're rooted in your spirituality, nothing else matters. And they can see whether you're rooted in what you say you believe. I might could fool you. You know what I'm saying? But they can tell if you're rooted, if you say who you say, if you are who you say you are.
Right.
But in North Carolina, 2019, they introduced a House bill, I think it was 467, that was trying to get mandatory Holocaust and genocide history. Jewish Holocaust and genocide history. We're not in that. It's a lot of people think that a bill is like a lot of pages, a lot of tedious reading. This is like 3 paragraphs. We want mandatory Holocaust education. We want the North Carolina Counselor on the Holocaust to oversee the program. And we want teachers to go through training to learn how to teach the Holocaust in all subjects.
Wow.
Applicable subjects, English, social studies, what have you.
Okay.
So I found out about that late last time. It had already cleared the House. It was going to the Senate. So I started running up on senators when they would get around, because it was election year. And senators, go around shaking hands, kissing baby. I'll run up on them. Excuse me, can we depend on you to just write in Black history? And I got the pushback, the runaround, because I won't say it's even pushback. It's benign neglect. We're just going to pretend we're not even going to deal with it. So for some reason, wink, wink, it never actually made it out of the Senate.
Okay.
Now, this year, I guess with all the energy for, because one thing about the European Jews, they're never going to let Black people have the spotlight for so long.
Right.
they're not going to let anybody eclipse their suffering,
Right.
but so long. You
Right.
know, it always got to be about, what they went through. So on February 10th, they reintroduced the bill. It's House Bill 69.
Mm.
Do the math. Upside down, yeah.
Right.
House Bill 69. And it's the same bill, basically, trying to make it illegal. Let's look at it the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Illegal not to teach Holocaust history to your Black children.
Wow. Wow. All right. There's a lot to unpack right there. But you also, that made me think. I had a discussion with a Jewish person. No, I didn't even have a discussion with them. I was speaking to my people about, historically some things that happened to us, and I referred to it as the African Holocaust. Mm-hmm. And a Jewish person checked me, or tried to check me. Let's get that right. Tried, right? But they tried to interject and say, I don't mean it. You know how they do in that. A lot of people, whenever they want to oppose what you're saying, they'll do it in a passive aggressive type of manner, right? And it's kind of like a thing to where they want to promote the Holocaust as being worse than the transatlantic slave trade, Jim Crow, and all of the things that have happened to us. Do you think that would be part of the reason why we may get pushback, or we will get pushback from adding Black history to that bill?
That's part of it. Everybody wants to share our platform, but nobody shares their platform with us. They'll piggyback off of our struggle, but they're not going to let anybody attach to their struggle.
Right.
Like Dr. John Henry Clark said, we have no friends.
Right.
We have no friends. I think it's that. And I also think is, if they're going to apply the same criteria to that in-depth study of the Holocaust, which they're proposing, overseen by a council. If we apply that same criteria to we're not even talking about Kemet, Songhai, Mali, Ghani, Timbuktu. We're not even talking about that. Right. We're talking about, even if we're just dealing with the transatlantic slave trade, you know what that's going to lead to?
What?
Who was involved in the slave trade? You can't apply that same critique as they're proposing to the transatlantic slave trade without naming everybody who was involved.
Right. And
so instead of admitting that they were involved in it, they just rather not have the conversation at all.
Wow. And so like that's another form of, like you mentioned before, of benign neglect. We're going to act like, instead of addressing it, we're just going to act like nobody's even bringing this up. It's not even a thing that exists.
Wow. Because at some point, Black people are going to be like, we had no role in your Holocaust. You had a role in ours. Right. And we're not going to talk about percentage.
Right.
We can talk about percentage of your population. We're not going to talk about the overall population. Let's talk about the percentage of your population.
Right.
So, that's that slippery slope, in their opinion, that nobody wants to go down, because there's a lot of falsehoods about Black-Jewish relations. And it's not that you can't dispel them just by bringing them up.
Right.
But so their thing is just not allow the platform for it to even be brought up.
Well, let me ask you this, G. We're talking about Durham, North Carolina, man, which always, from the time, we were young, was considered a Black city, right? Culturally, we had things like the Hayti Center, and that was the home of Black Wall Street at one time. We had institutions like the No. We had North Carolina Central. A lot of I can't remember the name of it, but there used to be a festival that we had that was
Bimbe.
Yeah, the Bimbe Festival, right? So we're talking about a city that is rooted culturally, right? In a lot of ways, or at least historically. I'm asking, what what good is learning about the Jewish Holocaust? How is that going to help Black children in Durham?
It's not. Especially since we've been fighting for us. The elders were fighting way before I got into a fight. Got into the fight for mandatory Black history. That's something I took up probably around 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
Because, my attitude is, look, I can just I've been giving out books on the corner for 15 years.
Right.
But sometimes, like the Black Panther used to say, it's the antagonistic contradictions you got to bring up sometimes. I need you to tell me no, and then tell me why you said no.
Right.
You're not going to be able to dismiss it. It's almost like the Emperor's New Clothes. You remember that story?
I remember the title. I remember the gist of it.
Yeah, little kid story. The Emperor was walking around naked, and everybody pretended he had clothes on, and nobody wanted to say anything. But one little kid who wasn't part of the machine, he pointed it out. Hey, that guy's naked.
Right.
And that changed the whole dynamic just because one little kid brought it out. So when you're dealing with this whole idea, it's not that it has to be, I don't have to pull out 10 scholarly books to have the effect. All you got to do is bring it up.
Right.
Now I'm not really that where I am kind of, I ain't gonna lie to you. In 5% terminology, because of the Melchizedek degree, you learn a little about everybody in the Melchizedek. Triple stage darkness, right? That doesn't mean it's totally, there's still a spark in triple stage darkness, if I understand it correctly.
Right. Well,
even though it's triple stage darkness, there's still a spark.
Yeah. So Elijah taught that within that triple stage darkness, the Black God created himself. So yeah, eventually there was a spark within that triple stage darkness.
So basically all you need is a spark. That's the point I was making.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
All you need is a spark. You don't need the whole shebang.
Right.
You just need something to spark that interest, spark the brain cells, as they would say.
Right, right.
So all it takes is somebody to raise the issue that, how come your Holocaust is more valuable than our Holocaust in the context, in the background of a whole sum of Black Lives Matter, when you were saying, Martin saying Black Lives Matter. What, Black lives don't matter anymore? Now we're back to 3/5 of the population. I know that was done for tax purposes, but just for the sake of this conversation. So I'm back to 3/5 of man. Last year, Black Lives Matter. So now the 25 to 75 to 100 million to 200 million, because on the conservative side, they say, well, it was only 25 million people that passed in the transatlantic slave trade.
Oh yeah, but that's the low end.
That's the very, very low. Right. Most scholars will say 75 million. Du Bois, 75 million. But Malcolm, I think, said 200 million.
Wow.
Some teachers is 200 million. If you're talking about not only the transatlantic slave trade, if you're talking about the invasion, the colonization, if you're talking about the wars that were funded in Africa, if you're talking about 400 years, you're probably talking about at least 200 million in total.
Right. Oh yeah.
Because the Congo, that was 10 million in itself.
Right.
12 million, I think.
Yeah.
Under Leopold.
Oh, yeah.
Under Leopold.
Yeah.
That was I think the Congo was like 12 million in and of itself.
Yep. And it's funny that you brought that up, and we're talking about, what's going on as far as the Holocaust education bill. King Leopold was as bad as Hitler, but we are not taught things in that type of framework. It's like, we understand why, but it's sometimes, even though we understand why, it can still be a little bit, like it can leave you a little bit dumbfounded, because it's like,